When you go on a school bus, you expect to be totally safe and totally a-okay. But one thing was for sure was that me back when I was in high school, I ended up getting on a school bus and let's just say I got abandoned from my field trip. What is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba and welcome back to another insane but super embarrassing story. Now this story all takes place back when I was actually in grade 6. Now grade 6 was my first year of middle school, and when I was in middle school I was a really just normal kid. I was sweet, I was simple, I wasn't anything special whatsoever. But let's just say this one time in middle school was the most scariest times of my life, because when you end up doing something that you love so much and you end up getting abandoned from it, it kind of scars you. What do I mean by this? Well, basically back when I was in grade 6, one thing I really loved was the zoo. My parents never really took me to the zoo growing up, and the only time I ever got to see exotic animals or something that was like, you know, cool, like a giraffe or a lion, was through the internet. I've always ended up seeing animals on screen other than dogs and cats and the occasional birds here and there. But my dream ever since I was a kid was to go see a monkey. Okay, whoa, by the way, I know what you're thinking, not that kind of monkey. I mean an actual monkey in, like, you know, the jungle. I always wanted to see one, and it's been my hopes and dreams since I was a child. So I remember in my grade 6 year, one day I ended up going inside my classroom, and when I went, I sat down at my desk and I saw my teacher walk in front of the classroom, pulling down the projector screen to turn on a video. I was confused on what video he was turning on until I saw that he ended up turning on a video about literally the African jungle. I think everyone knows, like, you know, those cool documentaries about, like, you know, Animal Planet, where basically it's about like animals that like do crazy like things, and it's like a documentary basically about exotic creatures. I remember I saw this and I started getting excited because obviously I thought seeing animals were really cool. But then afterwards, my teacher walked in front of the classroom and gave us the best news ever. I remember he said, "Class, we are officially going to the zoo. I'm gonna be handing out your permission slips right here. Everyone prepare and make sure your parents sign them." At this moment, I got super excited. You guys have no idea how excited I truly was, because it meant a big deal to me that we're going to the zoo. I remember that exact same day, I went straight home after school and I ran holding my permission slip in my hand and handing it to my parents. My parents were really strict parents, by the way. They always protected me and always made sure that I was safe no matter what. So when they saw the permission slip about going to the zoo, they were kind of concerned. I remember my mom started worrying that there were lions at the zoo and that I could get eaten by a lion. Or for example, my dad thought that I could, you know, end up dying from an ostrich, even though I don't really know how that would happen. I'm not sure why, but they came up with every excuse for me not to go on this field trip until I practically begged them, to the point where I literally went on my hands and knees and went, "Mom, Dad, please, just please let me go on this field trip. It mean a lot to me." My mom ends up looking at my dad and they ended up doing that like parent look where they look at each other and make a, you know, final decision on things. And they decided for me to actually end up going to the zoo. This got me super excited. If anything, this got me like the happiest kid ever. But let's just say the next day, things kind of took a turn. And I mean, literally. I remember I went to school the next day and I put on my whole safari outfit. Yeah, I used to wear button-up shirts all the time and I had button-up shirts for every event. And I remember I bought this specific one that was like a safari mesh color for this exact purpose, to go to the zoo with it. And I remember when I put this on, I went to school and right away when I went inside my classroom, I saw everyone else wearing the normal outfits they usually wear, but they were all super excited. To be fair, I think any kid can relate to this, where if you're going to school and you know that you're going on a field trip, not doing any homework or anything else regarding actual learning, it's super awesome. And yes, I think we all understand that we don't really learn anything from field trips. We just learn by seeing things, I guess. Not really. I don't really know, but not the point of the video. But going on, I remember after we all got to the classroom, we all handed in our permission slips and we started heading for the bus that was outside. And obviously when you go sit on the bus, it's actually a really cool experience because you know you're going somewhere. You get this sort of thrill in your stomach that like, yo, I'm getting on the field trip and I'm gonna go have an amazing time. So I hopped on the bus and afterwards I ended up sitting, actually funny enough, next to this guy that was super annoying, but at the same time he had a Nintendo DS, which was like a big trend, by the way, to have back then. Like you were considered one of the cool kids if you had a Nintendo DS. So I remember he whipped that out and he started playing Mario Kart and I started watching him and I'm like, dude, like I wish I had a Nintendo DS. But then things ended up making me kind of feel weird, because I remember when I looked out the window after like 30 minutes of driving, I realized that we were basically in the middle of the desert. Yeah, the literal desert. Like there was nothing there. It was pure emptiness and it was actually kind of scary, to the point where I remember I just decided to just keep looking inside and basically got really thirsty. I don't know why, but you know, it was really scary. And no, I wasn't that kind of thirsty before anyone says anything weird. I'm not that kind of weirdo. I remember when we got to the zoo, it was actually really fun. We all ended up getting off the bus. We all ended up going inside and we started looking at different animals. But as we were walking around in our giant group that the teacher made sure that we stuck together on, I ended up getting distracted and kept looking at at the animals for way too long. And to be fair, you guys can't blame me because I only saw animals on the internet. I never saw them in real life. And before you guys laugh at me for that, fun fact, the most popular and the first video on the internet ever was me at the zoo. Don't believe me? Search it up. But like I was saying, as I'm looking at all these amazing animals and as I'm like, you know, taking my time looking at each and every single one of them, I ended up walking with my classroom and that's when I saw a sign. Now this sign literally said monkeys this direction. And I got so excited to the point where I ended up basically kind of looking away because my class for some reason didn't go towards the monkey exhibit. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe a quick peek wouldn't matter. They wouldn't go that far ahead of me anyways. So at this moment, I started basically like, you know, heading towards the monkey exhibit and I started looking at all the monkeys from chimpanzees to gorillas to literally every type of monkey you can think of. Once again, I know what you're thinking, not that kind of monkey, okay? Seriously, stop being weirdos. Anyways, I saw the monkeys and got super excited. And there was even like a little cool area where you can hand bananas to the monkey. In a way, I don't know why, but at this moment, I felt like I was like the kid in the movie The Jungle Book, where basically like, you know, you're hanging out with monkeys and all these cool animals. And it kind of, you know, felt like I was Tarzan. Tarzan's a better example. It felt super awesome. But then I remember later on, I ended up looking at my phone and I saw that the time was actually getting super late to the point where I'm like, holy cow, I've been in this monkey exhibit for like 2 hours. What am I doing? So I ended up trying to head back towards like my class. But when I started heading back looking for my class, I realized that they were nowhere to be found. I started getting really confused and super scared to the point where I'm not even joking. I literally ran towards the exit and I saw them leaving the zoo. They were all getting on the bus and I was trying to get through, but there's like a giant gate that the zoo had that you needed like someone specifically to open the door for you. So as I'm panicking, basically behind these bars, I see them all get on the bus. And when I thought that they were going to take attendance, they ended up not doing it at all. And I just end up seeing the bus leaving. Yeah, the bus left me in the middle of the zoo. I remember one of the zookeepers ended up seeing me inside and he unlocked the door for me and ended up actually letting me out. And then afterwards, right when I thought he was going to help me get back to the school bus that was leaving, he ends up closing the door on me and saying, all right, kids, zoo's closed. Don't sneak in here ever again. You understand? Wait, what? I didn't sneak in. I was with my class. Okay, sure. Whatever you say. And he ends up walking away after closing the gate. So at this moment, I'm outside the zoo in the middle of the desert with absolutely no one. The only thing I have was my phone. And by the way, I like to call it a phone, but it wasn't actually a phone because I just realized that I could have just called someone to help me out, but it wasn't a real phone. If anything, it was called an iPod. If you guys know what that is, comment down below. But if you don't, I mean, tough. But like I was saying, I remember at this point, I ended up thinking to myself, how hard would it be to walk back from the zoo to my school? But then I started remembering that was like an hour and 30-minute drive. So if I could move as fast as a car, maybe I'll make it back in an hour 30 just on time to see my other classmates. Yeah, I don't know what logic that is because I just realized that the school bus was going like 60 miles per hour and me walking, well, that's more like 2 miles per hour. So in conclusion, there was no way for me to get back in time. Either way though, I remember I ended up just starting walking and I started walking through this desert. In a way, I kind of look like a hitchhiker, but over time, like I am not joking, I started getting really thirsty, I started getting really hungry, and I started to actually really panic. I didn't know what to think, but I just kept motivating myself to keep walking. And one of the motivators I had was that I wanted a future, that I wanted to become one day a big YouTuber. And another major motivator for me to keep walking, by the way, was that GTA 5 was literally coming out later that year. So 100%, I was gonna motivate myself to walk all the way home if I had to. I remember I kept walking and 2 hours went by. I started getting really nervous and panicking because I thought there was like no way that I was gonna get home. And I was worried about taking the wrong turn since I didn't have GPS, since my iPod didn't have Wi-Fi, since I was in the middle of the desert. So at that moment, I remember I took a moment and decided to just sit down. I needed a break from walking. I was already walking like 2 hours already. So obviously I took a break. I ended up sitting down and I remember literally not even 10 minutes later, out of nowhere, I ended up seeing a cop car drive down where I was at. I remember me thinking that the cop was just gonna drive by me, but when he saw me, he ended up turning on his lights and pulling over. At this point, I'm like, great, I'm stranded in the middle of the desert and I'm getting arrested for it. But luckily enough, this cop ended up walking up to me saying, excuse me, are you Bubba? Yeah. Here, come with me, son. Your parents are looking for you. They're worried sick. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Even though in my mind, I knew that my parents were never gonna let me go on another field trip ever again. But if you guys enjoyed this story, click on one of the videos on screen right now and follow for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.